Hello, everybody, and welcome to our virtual tax school webinar series. My name is Amar Medic, and I am the product marketing manager for TaxWise. With the filing season behind us, we hope you had another successful tax season in the books, and we wish you many more to come. Today's topic will be an introduction to 1040s. Whether you're a first-time filer or simply looking to refresh your knowledge, this webinar will provide you with valuable insights and practical tips on filing 1040s. Keep in mind, we try to host one of these webinars per month, so please feel free to join us in the future if you find today's session to be informative. You'll be able to submit questions throughout the webinar to the team, and we will try to answer those live as they come up or at the end if we have time. With that said, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Ryan Hubbs. He's a CPA and solutions architect here at Wolters Kluwer. Ryan has years of experience working in the tax industry and will be sharing his insights on how you can do 1040s. So with that, let's get started, Ryan. Please take it away.
Okay, thank you very much for the kind introduction. I want to really thank everybody who is attending here today. I know we just got through busy season, and I'm not quite sure how many people are new or have been doing this for a while, but I have done quite a few busy seasons in my time as an experienced tax professional, and it can be a real grind. And the fact that you all are showing up just a day after, really 2 days after, really a testament to how much you all value this profession and want to hone in your craft. And today, don't worry, we're not going into anything too complicated, too deep. We're just doing introductions to 1040s. And it's really going to be my goal to walk us through a basic tax return and do the input for the most common items that we're constantly seeing over and over and over again as we go through and do taxes, especially during busy season. Before I get rolling on the actual content that I have prepared here today, I do want to give a brief background on myself. My name is Ryan Hubbs. I have spent about 10 years working in the tax profession. Originally, it's what I went to school for. It's what I went to college for. Once I graduated, I moved up to Washington, D.C. I worked for 2 CPA firms, and I got to do a little bit of everything while I was up there. Did a little nonprofit work, did a few audits, but the bread and butter of what I was doing was definitely taxes. I've probably done at least 1,000 tax returns in my life, probably many more. My current role here at Wolters Kluwer, I'm a solution architect. Really, I'm a product specialist, and I like to impart knowledge to other tax professionals in this current role, which is why we host these webinars on a monthly basis. Do want to go over briefly what my objectives are here today and the content that we're going to be going over. And we're going to be starting with the very basics. Who files a 1040? It's a pretty simple question, so I don't think we'll spend too much time on that. But really the next 4 bullet points, these are really going to be the meat of the presentation. We're going to be doing basic data input into its 1040, and we're looking at the most common items, W-2s, a whole bunch of different 1099s, and definitely going to be going over retirement income. And then lastly, I do want to go over the itemized versus the standard deduction. It's a common question I get from my friends, really, when they're trying to do their taxes. Which one's better? And we're going to take a look at both those, look at some different examples as well. And then we're going to be doing all of this using a live presentation using tax preparation software. So with all that being said, I do want to ask one quick polling question before we get going. And it's going to be, how many tax seasons have you participated in? And the reason that we're asking this is we always want to make sure that the content that we are providing on these monthly webinars is going to be things that you're going to be interested in. And I know today's topic is a little bit more of an introduction into just the 1040 and some of the basics of the return, but we want to make sure moving forward that these are topics that interest you. So I'll give you all, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds or so. We'll get the results. We'll go ahead, we'll read them live. And then once we do that, we're going to go ahead and really jump into this presentation. And if it is your first, or if this will be your first tax season coming up next year, don't be shy to let us know. Like I said, it's really just to make sure we're giving content that is needed for all the people that participate in these webinars.
So we're at 90%, just a few minutes, I guess, or just a few seconds to the final votes trickle in.
Sure, that sounds great.
Okay, so we have roughly half the people here have been over 5 years now, and 22% said this will be their first. So pretty good mix up.
Okay, fantastic. And that's what I like to see. I like to see a very uh, broad category of experience here for these. So now that we know that, I'm going to go ahead and really get started and jump into this presentation. And today, there's going to be a pretty strong focus on doing all of this live. But before we jump into the tax preparation software, since we do have about a quarter of the people here, let's go ahead and identify, oops, wrong way on the clicker there. Let's go ahead and identify who files a 1040 tax return. The 1040 is going to be used for US taxpayers to file their annual income tax return. And there's going to be a couple different options when you go in. If you're single, it'll be just for you. Many people are married. A lot of them will file a joint return together. And the whole purpose of the 1040 is really to report all the different types of income that it's possible to receive. And you can see by this slide, it's a very diverse group of different income categories. We have your standard things, wages, interest, investments, but it's not uncommon for some of your clients to go ahead and maybe they have welfare or they have gambling winnings. And really, there's no limit to what the IRS wants to know and what they want you to go ahead and claim, because the IRS is trying to make as much money every tax season as they possibly can. And as one caveat, if one of your clients does have a small business, they may possibly report that on a Schedule C, which is different than a business return. It's still something that is going to be a part of the 1040. We've actually already done a presentation on the Schedule C and who files that, so I'm not really going to be spending any time whatsoever on going over it. I just want to make you all aware. And if that does seem like something that would interest you, after we go and do these presentations, we do upload them to our YouTube account. And I actually want to check the other day. It is up there. It is live. So if you really want to dive into any of the other topics, Schedule C, Schedule E, or anything else that we've done in the past, all of this content is going to be on YouTube as well as this webinar here today. And just kind of rounding out this slide here, a common question that I get or that I've been asked is, well, what if I find just a little bit of money on the ground? What if I find $20 on the ground? Am I supposed to report this to the IRS? And you may be surprised to hear the answer is yes. The IRS does want you to do that. And I think from a practical standpoint, I would guess that most of the time people are not going to go ahead and report that. But the reason that I like to go ahead and include this question is just to kind of help you wrap your head around that really they want to know about all types of income, and there really is no limit to what you do and don't have to report. And if you're ever in a gray area, you're not quite sure, usually best to just go ahead and report that income. So with all that being said, I actually want to transition away from the PowerPoint presentation and start diving into a live practical example. So we're going to be using TaxWise Online today to go ahead and walk through a tax return. And it's a browser-based program, so I'm going to go ahead, log on here. I have all my information saved. Let's go ahead and log in. And we really are going to be starting with just the very basics. So we're going to go ahead and start a new return. And this is going to be a dummy return. I'm going to go ahead and enter in a fake social security number here. 1 second, and we're going to go to tax forms. We are going to look at the interview mode towards the end of this presentation, but we're going to start off by just looking at the different tax forms. So let's go ahead and create this. No, I don't want to go ahead and save. And we are now within a 1040 tax return. And just to give you a quick lay of the land before we really go in and start adding forms and doing data input, I want to draw your attention to how we're going to navigate within TaxWise. And if we come over here to the left-hand side where I'm pinging my mouse, you're going to see a whole bunch of different forms and schedules. Well, this is just what's going to come pre-populated when we first open up a tax return. And if we wanted to go ahead and navigate through some of these different items that are already within here, we could go and jump to the 1040. And this is actually the 1040 as it would be If you were to print out the IRS form itself, this is the exact same look. You can see we're starting off totally blank. Here are all our income categories, all zeros. We're going to go ahead and start inputting here as we go throughout this presentation. Just want to make you aware of how you navigate. But where we're going to start off is actually not on the 1040 tax form itself. We're actually going to go ahead and start on the main information worksheet. And when we load up the main information worksheet here, this is going to be where we enter in the very basics of the person's whose tax return that we are preparing. And you can see based off the social security number that we added in a little bit earlier, already populating through the return. And this is going to be a common theme that you're going to see is once you enter in information one time, if it's applicable to flow through anywhere else, you're going to see that it will flow through automatically on its own. But let's go ahead and start populating this main information sheet. We're not going to go and do every single item, as I think that might get a little bit boring, but I at least want to start off with some of the basics. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is my tax return. I'm going to enter in my name here. I'm going to go ahead and enter in a spouse as well. Let's go ahead and enter in Ashley. We'll go make a dummy social security number for her as well. And we're going to go ahead and enter in the mailing address and the address that they're living at. We're going to go ahead and say if they lived on Petit Court. And then one of the nice things is all you have to ever do is enter in the zip code. City and state will automatically populate. So we're going to go ahead and enter in my home state of Virginia, my home zip code. I tab over. You can see it's automatically populating these areas. And one of the things that you're probably noticing as we're going through and some of these key items, some of these items are have red underlines underneath of them. They're really popping out. They really stand out. And this is a fail-safe within TaxWise, where if there are any critical items that must be done before you go ahead and e-file this return, they're always going to have a red underline underneath of them. And as we go through and start to enter in the information, I'm going to put my birth date right here. When we tab over, you can see, look, it's removing the red underlines. And as a general rule of thumb, these red underlines, they can't tell if you've actually input the information correctly from the forms that you're receiving from employers or government or financial institutions. But at least if you have them entered, you haven't missed any key areas. And you're really going to be relying more on your review information. We're going to go ahead, enter in my job title here, and I want to scroll down and get to the filing status. We'll go ahead, we'll say we're going to file jointly, and then we'll go ahead and add an independent. And it's always important to make sure you're adding in all these items and checking the correct boxes, is if you are going to take a standard deduction, the more dependents you have, the different filing statuses, this is all going to calculate in how much in taxes that you can save. So let's go ahead, add in a dependent here. We'll add in a date of birth, 01/2020. You can see that there's some automatic calculations occurring here. But once we go through, I'll add in one more fake social security number here, add in the son, the months in the home, and we'll say it's a child who lives with us, and we're going to be done with the main information worksheet for right now. If we were actually doing this tax return, we would really need to go and get all of these red items out, but since this is just a dummy return, we're not going to go through and do every item. Really, there's only one more thing that I do want to draw your attention to, is you'll notice on our right-hand side here, these are all federal items. There's also many state returns for the states that do require income taxes, which is, by and large, most of the states here. Well, how do we get that information input into the forms tree on the left? We're going to come down to where it says state information. We're going to go ahead and say I was a full-time resident of Virginia. We're going to type in VA. We're going to tab over, and then look, you can see on our forms tree right here, it's added in the Virginia 760, and that is the Virginia income tax return. And the information has, we can see the forms on the forms tree here on the left-hand side. But if we actually go through and go into the 760, you can see that most of the information that we've already entered automatically populating for us. We're not going to have to go through each and every time and re-enter what's the name, what's the address. Really, once you put it on this main information worksheet once, you're done, and you're going to see this information flow through over and over and over again. One more thing that I do want to make sure that you're aware of within TaxWise. So you see there's a lot of green underlines here. What these green underlines are going to represent and signify, this is a calculated field. It means one of two things. Either there are a bunch of different figures that are being added up or subtracted, and that's how it's coming up with it. Or when you see that, it's basic information, not financial information, these green underlines let you know this is pulling from a different area, and this is going to be an automatic calculation. If you actually need to go and change any of these, you would not just go in and change the information. You can see if I try to change my name, it says calculated entry, select the option and see the choices. And where you go and select that option is by going right here where you see this little arrow, and we can go ahead and either toggle this estimated, or we can go back to the main information worksheet and change the information here as well. So with all that being said, let's go ahead now that we have like a good lay of the land, how we're going to be navigating through this application. Let's go ahead and go and add in a new worksheet. We're going to go ahead and start off with a W-2. I think the W-2 is the most common worksheet that is within the 1040. I don't know of too many people that have never received a W-2 in their entire lives. And let's go ahead, and how we're going to add in a new item is let's go click on this plus arrow that's right above our forms tree right here. And we're going to go ahead and just type in W-2. We can see we have the wage and tax statement. So we're going to go ahead and click the plus, and it is going to load up this worksheet for us. We're going to go ahead and say this is my W-2. This is for the taxpayer. We're going to say, okay, yes, this is the correct address that is shown. And when we scroll down, we're going to get to a bunch of different boxes with either a letter next to them or a number next to them. Now, these items with the letter, this is really just basic information. These items with the numbers, these are going to be your financial information. And what I've gone ahead and done today is if we jump back into our PowerPoint, let me make it a little bit bigger so we can all see it. There we go. Let's go ahead and look at a W-2. And I have a dummy W-2 right here. Looks like it's from the Burger Hut. Obviously, the address is not exactly matching what we have the tax-wise, but since this is a dummy return, don't worry about it. But typically, you would want these to match up. These would need to be exactly the same. And especially for you people that are new and you're maybe just dipping your toe in the water, is this something I want to do? I've heard you can make good money doing this, but I've heard taxes are so complicated, and tax returns can be complicated. I've worked on items with foreign income and FBARs. That can get real complicated, but the vast majority of what I did when I was preparing taxes was really just matching up the information that they went ahead and showed me, or that was given to me, I should say, and just making sure I'm inputting it into the tax software correctly. And we can see the different boxes that have already been populated. And it's not your job to go ahead and send off a W-2. Really, you should be getting this information from your customers, and they should give you all of the information that they've received from employers, financial institutions, so on and so forth. And then you're just making sure that you enter it correctly into the software. So I'm going to go ahead. Looks like we have $17,421 wages. So let's go ahead and start entering in this information. 17,421. We'll tab over. We're going to go ahead and do the federal tax withheld, which is going to be $1,806. And it should be noted that this box in box 2, this is not what their taxes are. This is not what is due. This is not what's owed. This is just simply the money that has been withheld throughout the year. And typically, you do a small amount each and every paycheck. So when you do have to go and file your taxes, you don't have a huge amount due, or hopefully, then what will make your customers most happy, you'll get a refund back, right? And we can see based off the 2 boxes that we entered, box 1 and box 2, well, 3, 4, 5, and 6 automatically being calculated. And this goes back to the different underlining schemes here. This has a black underline between under box 1, box 2. This is kind of our prompt that we need to go ahead and enter in this financial information. These green items, this is an automatic calculation, really based off box 1 more so than box 2. But what's important to note is that we're going to go, or the software is going to go ahead and do the calculation for you. And, I would say 9 times out of 10, maybe even more, it's going to be correct, but it's just a calculation. Every now and then, maybe something is a little bit different on your actual W-2 worksheet or any of your other worksheets the same, always make sure you're defaulting to what is on the W-2. You want to make sure that you're always using this number. And if you ever need to go ahead and change it, you can simply go into TaxWise and change this information in the direct fields. Now, let's go ahead and enter in Burger Hut. I'm just going to go ahead and make up a address here, Starfish Lane. Go ahead and enter in the SOCH, or excuse me, the address. And most of this is fairly self-explanatory. Really, there's only two areas that might trip you up, in my opinion, and that's going to be boxes 12 and 15. Box 12 is going to be a lot of the different benefits that a person might receive. And we could go ahead, and if we see the item, we know, okay, it's code DD, and it was $12,000. We can go ahead and just enter in the information. Keep in mind that once we go back into our W-2, it's always going to state what the code is and what the amount is. But just make sure you don't miss it. It's very important. It could change their taxes significantly, as benefit information may be taxed differently and adjust their actual wages. And then you come to box 15. I would say by and large, most items that you have are just going to be one line here. But what this is the state information. And if it's just a simple job or, like a job I have now where you just work in one state, it's always going to be just one thing. You can go ahead, enter in the state ID. We can see some of this information pulling. Go ahead, enter in the taxes. But if you have someone who's traveling state lines quite a bit, or, sometimes you will have to go ahead and divvy out the state income based off the state lines that they are traveling. We can go ahead and add in North Carolina, enter in a code here. And, it may not be the full amount, maybe only a little part of it is actually being taxed. And once again, the point that I really want to drive home, though, is it's really your job to just take the information on this W-2 and make sure it is matching up in the tax prep software. The tax prep software is going to do most of the work for you. Moving on from W-2, which I would say is by far the most common item, I want to go and transition and look at some of the different and various 1099s that you may or may not get for a tax return. And let's go back into our PowerPoint. And I want to go ahead and start off with interest income. I'd say interest income was probably the second most common item that I ran into. And you can probably notice just by looking at this, this looks kind of similar to the W-2. Definitely some of the boxes are different, but it's going to be the same concept. And interest income, and any of you don't know, let's say you have a bank account or a closed deposit and it's accruing some interest on a yearly basis. They're going to get this information from their financial institution. And once they get it to you, just make sure that once they give it to your customer, I should say, just make sure that they're giving it to you. Same kind of deal as before. We're really just matching up the boxes. So we're going to go ahead and jump back into TaxWise here. And let's go and add a new form. Now within TaxWise, we actually added onto a Schedule B. And a Schedule B is going to be the interest and ordinary dividend income. It's actually multi-purpose. You do this for interest and you do it for dividends. We are going to take a look at dividends directly after interest. So let's go ahead and add in this Schedule B here. And once we go ahead and add it in, you're going to notice that there's a whole bunch of different sections. This isn't quite as straightforward as the W-2. When we went and looked at the W-2 right here, it basically just matches up perfect, right? We have boxes on the right side. We have, the B and C, the employer information. A little bit different with the Schedule B. You can see, okay, here's the actual interest section where we can enter it. You can see there's only two boxes right here, but if we go back into the 1099 interest, you can see there are a ton of different areas. I know since I've done enough tax returns that we're going to have to go ahead and enter in more than just what the interest income is, because we have some federal taxes withheld. And, you may or may not have taxes withheld, and these other boxes may or may not be populated. But what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to come to box B here, and we're going to use our arrow on the right hand side, and we're going to go ahead and click the arrow, and you can see we get a few different options, and I'll go over what the other options are here in a little bit. But what we really want to go ahead and do is link it to another form. So we're going to go ahead and click on this, You can see we have a pop-up box. It's blank. The reason that it's starting off blank is that we don't have any existing items. We can see we have 2 tabs here. We're going to go ahead and click on New. And once we do that, we're going to go ahead and add in this interest statement. And once we do that, you're going to see we have a much more comprehensive area to go ahead and enter in our 1099 interest. So let's go ahead and go back and see, okay, this is coming from Regions Bank. So we're going to go ahead and add them as the payer, the financial institution, Regions Bank. Is there a box 1 or 3 amount? Looks like there's nothing in 3. There is one in interest income, 1987. Let's go ahead and add that in. Oops. Click over here. And 1 second here. Go ahead. And I was supposed to go one more link. Here we go. Bank 1987. There we go. And then we're going to get to a box that says TSJ. What is TSJ? That stands for taxpayer, spouse, or joint. And this is going to get back to some of the different filing statuses that we have. The IRS technically wants us to report, even if it's a married couple, I should say. They still want to know who has what income. Taxpayer, that's going to be the primary person filling out the return. In this case, that is going to be me. Spouse, that would be my spouse, Ashley. Or sometimes you'll have joint income, and that's when you select the joint code. We're going to go ahead and say for this Region Bank, this is actually mine, so we're going to go ahead and put a big T there, so it's taxpayer. We're going to jump back in and look at the 1099 one more time here. And it looks like the only other box that we have to add in is the federal withholdings. It looks like you have $98. And if you are new, it's always you're always going to go ahead and round up or round down when you're adding in the income. You know, they're not worried about the 88 cents. If it says 97.88, just go ahead, round up to $98. And as we go through, you know, it's possible to either have just one item. It's possible to have many. If you did have a separate item, we could say, okay, we have Wells Fargo, and you know, you could just add in the amounts. You can add in as many here as you need. And let's go ahead and say there's $100 in withholdings. And you can see this is the list goes on and on and on. If they ever do, for whatever reason, they have so much interest that it goes past this, you can always add in a second interest worksheet. I think given the length of how many you can add in on one, I think that would be rare. I'm sure someone has done it though in the past, but just want to make you aware that you're never going to be hard capped to the amount of different items you can have within a statement. If you ever need to add more, just go ahead, you can add in a separate worksheet. Now, the next thing that I want to go ahead and go over is we want to stick with the Schedule B. And we actually want to scroll down a little bit further than where we are. When we get to Part 2, we get to a section called Ordinary Dividends. Now, dividends are going to be different than interest income. And if you don't know, if you own a stock, some stocks will pay a small amount back to their stockholders on, you know, it could be a quarterly, it could be an annual basis. I think most often it's an annual basis, but that's not really going to go ahead and matter for you. What really matters for you as the tax preparer is that you are getting this form right here, the 1099 dividend. And look how similar this is to the interest form. I mean, these are almost exactly the same, right? And it's going back to the same concept that I keep drilling through over and over and over again. It's not our jobs to go ahead and fill these different 1099s out. It's our jobs to make sure that we are reporting them correctly to the IRS. So let's go ahead and jump back into TaxWise. And we're going to do the same thing as before. You know, you could come in and enter in the information here. If you know it's simple, there's no withholdings, you know the amount. You can do it, but if we go back in and we see, okay, there's federal taxes withheld, the summary page that we're looking at doesn't have anywhere for these taxes to be withheld. So it's going to be the same exact process as before. So let's go ahead and right click. Let's link it back to the worksheets, and we're going to go ahead and enter in a new dividend statement. One thing that I want to make you aware of before I go ahead and add this new dividend statement, we actually look at our forms tree on the left-hand side. You can see we have the Schedule B. You can see we have the interest statement that we just added. Let's go ahead and add in the dividend statement and look. it's populating underneath of the Schedule B. So any items that we have and that we add in, it's always going to keep them in a logical order and a logical place where we can easily go back and find them. Oh, I need to find my dividend income. We'll just find Schedule B. It's going to be listed off a little bit to the side, a little bit to the right, underneath of it. Let's go ahead now and enter in this dividend income, and it looks like it's coming from trade right. So we'll go ahead, we'll add that in, trade right. And you can see there's two different categories, ordinary dividends, qualified dividends. Ordinary dividends are typically taxable items, and it's going to increase their AGI and raise their taxes. Qualified, typically not taxable, but once again, this is going back to, look, we have two different boxes here. We have box 1A, so this is the ordinary. We can see for this specific 1099 on box 1B, really nothing here. So we're going to go ahead and enter in the $502 into the ordinary dividends. We'll go ahead and say this is a joint income. Maybe they own the investment account together. And then we're going to go ahead and look at our 1099 dividend one more time. Are there any other boxes? Yes, there is. Federal income taxes withheld, $33. So we would just go to withholdings, $33. And that's it. We're done. And as you go through and do more and more of these forms and of these worksheets, you're going to get extremely quick at this. I'm going at a slower pace so everybody can follow, but I can promise you, probably by the 10th return, you're going to know where most of these items are, because we are going over the most common items. So these are the sort of things that you're going to run into over and over and over again. Moving forward from this, I want to go ahead and transition and talk about two more 1099s. And there seems to be quite a bit of confusion with these two items. So let me go back into my PowerPoint here. And let's go to my next slide. And you can see I have a slide named here, 1099 Misc versus 1099 NEC. What are these two items? Well, the 1099 Misc, that stands for miscellaneous. It's going to be income items that haven't fallen into any of the categories that we've talked about so far. 1099 NEC, this is going to be non-employment compensation. And 10 years ago when I was preparing tax returns, fresh out of college, basically everything was the miscellaneous. Very rarely did you run into NEC. But that has changed a little bit because the IRS has changed how contractor labor is reported. And the reason that they've changed that is the self-employment tax. They really want to make sure that the IRS is maximizing the amount of taxes that they're taking from people in order to make sure, and there's going to be different withholdings that these two forms are going to be subject to. And we can see by this slide that the 1099 miscellaneous used in reporting of payments that are not subject to the self-employment tax. And the easiest way to think about this is, okay, what are items that aren't really a job, but you're receiving income for anyways? Think of rent, think of prizes. Maybe they called into a radio show, they got a prize. Well, that's still going to be taxable, and it's going to be reported on the 1099 miscellaneous. Now, the 1099 NEC, this is going to be used for reporting the non-employee compensation, and it is going to be subject to the self-employment tax. If you have any independent contractors that you've ever worked with, whoever they are working with, the parent company, they're going to be the ones sending them the 1099 NEC. And once again, it's not going to be up to you to make this designation as to which is which. You're going to get a clear form from the employer, or in this case, from the person who's hired the contractor, I should say, that's going to let you know. And what I really just want to go ahead and drill down into is that whether you have the 1099 miscellaneous or the NEC, it's going to be pretty similar process. We're going to go back. We're just going to go ahead and add in, add a form here. We're going to type in 1099, and you can see all of the various 1099s that you possibly could have gone ahead and been populated. We're going to go ahead and do the 1099 miscellaneous for today's example. We're going to go ahead, add it in here, and we can see we have the miscellaneous income. If we go through, we'll say, okay, taxpayer, EIN, that'll always be listed on the actual 1099 form. We'll just go ahead and add that in. Go ahead and put a name. Okay, they got some contract or from a rental property, excuse me. and you just go ahead and enter in the rent, and that's it. You're pretty much done here. You see there's a box here if you want to include this on Schedule E income. And the reason that, if we actually go back, look, let me go back. Right now it is, it's just a black item, but as we go through, we enter in the information, you can see we're getting that red critical underline. And the reason that it's asking us is that it's a rental income. There is another form called the Schedule E. I just did a presentation on it. It's on YouTube. Where rental income that has its own separate schedule to actually report not only the rent, but many of the expenses are also going to be deductible as well. Not going to go into the Schedule E here today, as I just did. I think that was last month's presentation. But if that is something you want to dive into, once again, it is going to be on our YouTube channel. 1099 NEC, basically the same. Let's go ahead and add this in here. We'll go ahead and type in 1099 one more time. We'll go ahead and add in the NEC. We'll go ahead and add it in here. And look, it's very, very similar, and it's really the same as all of the other 1099s that I've shown you today. Really just up to us to match the boxes to what we're going ahead and seeing. Not going to go ahead and go through each and every item, as I have some other things that I want to go over here today, but just making you aware that it is something that you can do, and just make sure that you know the different designation, as it is going to be taxed differently due to that self-employment tax. The last 1099 that I want to go ahead and go over today is going to be the 1099R. And this is also a very common 1099. You know, the NEC, the miscellaneous, you're going to run into that quite a bit, but the 1099R is the one that you're going to run into quite a bit more for your retired employees. So let's go ahead. This will be the last 1099 we look at here today, and add in 1099R. What the purpose of this worksheet is to go ahead and, I must have clicked something wrong here. Here we go. Is to go ahead and report retirement income, whether that be IRAs, whether it be pensions, kind of so on and so forth. And we go ahead and just check these boxes here. And you know, this is another item that you're going to get from a financial institution, and you just have to match up the different boxes to what you are seeing. Really, I would say almost all retirement income is always going to be reported on the 1099R. Like anything within taxes, there will always be a few exceptions here or there, but I'd say the vast majority of your retirement income going to be reported right here as well. So I think I've given you all a pretty good breakdown of the different income types. I would say these are the most common income types that I'm constantly running into really during tax season. I'm probably running into one of these on every return. I can't think of too many tax returns that I've done that people don't have any of these. And probably the reason for that is if they don't have any income whatsoever, they might be doing their returns on their own, because there's not a whole lot of work for us to go ahead and do as tax professionals. But what I want to go ahead and dive into next is I actually want to open up another polling question here. And I want to go ahead and start talking about the different deductions that we can go ahead and take. And for this polling question, this is maybe the most common question that my customers give me. Well, is it better to take the standard or the itemized deduction? And I've given you 4 options here. We have the standard deduction, itemized, depends on the situation, and not sure. If you're not sure, don't worry about it. This is meant to be a learning experience for anyone. But I think knowing the answer to this is really going to be critical for y'all, especially if you are new, you are thinking about jumping into this, because you're going to run into this question over and over and over again. You will eventually get so tired of explaining this and answering this question that you will have it memorized, maybe for the rest of your life. So I'm going to go ahead and, let's see, give you all 30 seconds, I guess, and then we're going to go ahead and dive into both the different deductions and when to use each. Okay, just whatever you have the results on. Ready?
Just giving a little second. We've got 70% in so far. So 74. I think we've got it. Okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and share it.
Sure.
So yeah, we've got about 80% saying it depends on the situation.
And that 80% would be correct. There will absolutely be times where the standard deduction is better or the itemized deduction is better. And it's really going to depend on the amount of dependents they have for the standard deduction. For itemized, it's a little bit different. And let's actually just go ahead. I should probably just transition here to the next slide, as it's going to kind of break down both of these. Here we are. And we can see I have the standard versus itemized deduction slide. The standard amount, this is by far the least time intensive one to go ahead and do, because it's going to go ahead and lower your taxable income by a fixed amount. And it's going to depend on, your filing status, number of dependents for sure. So if you have many dependents, you'll get a larger standard deduction. But really all you would have to do on your end is select the filing status. Are they married filing jointly, separately? Is this a single return? Add in the dependents. Tax software is going to go ahead and calculate that and give you a standard deduction that will minimize, or I should say reduce, their taxable income. Now, itemized is going to be a little bit more complex. It's going to go ahead and lower your taxable income based off specific expenses that were that occurred throughout the year. And these expenses are IRS approved. Not every, don't keep every single receipt that you've gone and received, as most of the things you buy throughout the year probably can't be itemized. But if it is falling under that list of specific items, you can go ahead and do that. And there's going to be a specific schedule that we're going to look at. Should note, you can't mix and match. You cannot take both deductions, and you're going to have to choose which one will lower their taxes more for each return that you complete. Luckily, the tax software itself is going to be able to do that calculation for me. But I do want to impart some knowledge onto you that I ran into when working at a CPA firm probably 5 or 6 years ago. I had a lady, and she gave me all of her information, and it just added up to a few $100s. And when I went and did her tax return, I knew that the standard deduction was going to be better. I've done so many returns, it was going to be a much better option. When she was going through and looking at it, she says, well, you didn't put in any of my itemized deductions. And I tried to explain to her, well, you don't really need to. I can just look at it and see that the standard is going to be better. But she felt like I didn't do a good job for her. She felt like she was paying me for a service, and I did not do my due diligence. And what I had to end up going and doing is inputting all the itemized items, that just added up to a little bit of money. And I showed her that the standard was better. But, it's very important to make sure, based off each customer, that even if you know what's best, because you've done so many returns and you know that, okay, standard or itemized is better, you always want to be showing them that if this is something that they're very diligent about, that you are going ahead and really putting the time and effort, showing them, okay, well, this is why I chose standard, this is why I chose itemized. And the reason that I'm talking about this story is she did not use me the next year. Even though I ended up being correct and I had the right deduction, she felt like I did not spend enough time on her return, that I was not, she was not getting her money's worth using me as a tax preparer. So just want to make you aware that, even when you know the answer, it's always important to make sure that your customers are satisfied with that answer. And what I want to go and transition to is I do want to talk a little bit more about the standard versus the itemized and some real specific examples. I'm going to go ahead and cycle to the next slide here. And you can see, like I was saying earlier, the standard deduction is really a fixed amount. We can see the different amounts here for 2022. And then for 2023, 2023 is going to be the tax returns that are due next year, and basically 12 months. And it will typically go up on an annual basis. They do try to, I should say, peg this for inflation. That's not always exact, but it usually typically goes up by a small amount on a year-over-year basis. You don't really need to have these different amounts memorized, as TaxWise is going to go ahead and just know them for you. But where it kind of is helpful to have these amounts at the top of your head is when you're thinking about, okay, is this going to be itemized? Is this going to be standard? I mean, if you know these amounts, you can briefly look at the itemized items and see if which one is you think is going to be better. And if you did run into a customer that was going to go ahead and you think they were going to itemize, what you're going to do is, let's jump back into TaxWise. We're going to add in our final schedule. It looks like I already have it here. You're going to come to the Schedule A. So let's go ahead and click on this. And this is the itemized deduction worksheet, which we can see up top here. And there are going to be a whole bunch of different sections. And the reason why there are so many different sections, let's go ahead and scroll down, as opposed to just having one long list with everything together. These different categories are because the deductions are taken at different amounts. The tax law is, I believe, for just the 1040, the last time I looked at it, was around 20,000 pages. And everything seems to be a little bit different. Nothing ever seems, it's not very standardized. There's not a lot of fixed amounts. So you will have to go through and match up different receipts and invoices and maybe even bank statements and go through and, add in these different areas. You can see some of these items already flowed through, but based off the information that's already in the return, we can see that some of these automatic calculations coming in. Go through, I'm not going to go through every item, but you can see you have items like taxes. If we scroll down further, interest that you paid, and typically the interest that you paid for 1040s, typically going to go ahead and deal with mortgage interest on property that you own. I would say that is by far the most common schedule itemized deduction that you're going to see. If we continue to scroll down here, gifts to charity, I've definitely had some people that have tried to claim $50,000 in gifts that they gave to Goodwill. You have to keep in mind that you need to do some due diligence to make sure that they're just not trying to get their way out of all their taxes. That is actually something that is on you to make sure that the deductions that they're claiming are fair and reasonable based off your professional knowledge. Going to go ahead and transition to a couple more slides that we have here, as we are starting to run a little short on time. But I want to talk about a few of the other tools that are going to be within TaxWise to make sure that you are getting returns done correctly. And the tools that I want to highlight are these three. Get the red out, which I've talked about pretty much a little bit throughout this entire presentation, but want to go ahead and jump into TaxWise and just show one more application of get the red out. You can see that we've gone through many of these items where there's red underlines. We just click on one, we can see one here. And excuse me. But if we look at our forms tree on the left-hand side here, you can see that some of these items are in black or gray. Some of these have red exclamation points, and some are in green. And this is just for you at a glance to go ahead and see, okay, which one of these items are done. We can see by this green check mark, this item is done. The 8812, this is done. Anything that has a red exclamation point. If we go ahead and click on it, well, if we scroll down, we're going to see more red underlines that are going to require us, that we are required to fill out before e-filing this return. Now, a couple different items also, besides get the red out, that are going to be within this return, is I want to talk about the interview worksheet and the interview mode. And these are going to be two separate areas, or two separate tools, I should say, but they're really going to fulfill very similar needs. And excuse me one second. A little bit of a scratchy throat here today. Please bear with me. So what I'm going to do for interview, let's start off with the interview worksheet before we go into the interview mode. And I guess I should backtrack. These are going to be two tools that are really going to help walk you through a return, especially if you are new. And even if you are not new, but you have staff or you have seasonal people that you hire, this is meant to be kind of a catch-all to help them get the return done. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and press our add to forms. I'm going to go type in interview. And you can see this is the interview sheet. When we go and add this, this is a very simple questionnaire, and it's a yes/no questionnaire. And it is going to ask you for, do they have these types of income? As you go through and start to click yes on some of these items, it's actually going to be adding the various worksheets or forms that need to be completed to the tax return. And if you're ever not sure, if we continue to scroll down, well, it'll just straight up ask you, okay, did you receive these forms? If you received these forms, click yes, and it's going to start putting in the actual forms into your tree for you to complete. This is a very nice tool, I'd say, for someone who is new to taxes, but not brand new, because we do have a separate tool called interview mode, not to be confused with the interview worksheet, that you can use if someone is really brand new. Maybe they've never done a 1040 before. They go and they log into their tax software, they're just totally overwhelmed. They have no idea what's going on. Well, go ahead and direct them to switch to interview. And when you switch to the interview, it's going to actually completely change our data input. Look, we're no longer looking at a 1040. We're no longer looking at the various worksheets, but we are being prompted here to go ahead and answer some of these questions. Filing status. If we were to go ahead, we could go to personal info, and it's going to change our data input. And instead of working on the forms and the worksheets themselves, we can use this interview mode to go ahead and get the tax return done. You know, there may be some rare situations that maybe it's not going to catch and you find a form or a worksheet that you need to go ahead and find it yourself. But I would say 9 times out of 10, this will absolutely get you from basically start to finish through a tax return. If we were to click on types of income, you know, it's completely changing. It's saying, okay, it has what we've already added in here. If there was anything new, look, okay, do we have a 1099-R? Yes, we can go ahead and enter in the amount. Great tool if you do want your handheld just a little bit as you're learning the ropes to make sure that you are getting these returns done correctly. And the last tool that I want to go over is going to be something called our diagnostic report. And this is very similar to get the red out. Oh, and I accidentally closed out of my tax return. Let me go ahead here and go ahead and reopen it. We'll get over here. And the last tool that I want to go over is going to be the diagnostic report. You can see it listed right here, and I can go ahead and click on it. And it's going to open up this window on the top side, I should say, above the worksheet that you're looking at. And if we continue to scroll down, you're going to see some color coding going on here. We have warnings, we have errors, we have overridden entries. Well, what are all of these? Well, the most important things are always going to be the errors. These are critical items. They'll probably get the red out items that have not been done, that need to be completed before e-filing this return. If you try to file this return with error diagnostics within it, it's going to get rejected by the IRS. It just is. But if you need to go and clear up any of these items, all you have to do is click on the specific item that you want to go ahead and fix, and it'll actually change the worksheet that you're looking at and actually direct you. Okay, we can see we have some get the red out items. If we continue to scroll down further, we can see warning. And warning is going to be a little bit different than error diagnostics. These are things that are probably incorrect in the return and need to be fixed. However, it's not necessarily always going to be rejected if you go ahead and try to e-file this return, but most likely there's probably an error associated with it that you want to go and fix. Overriding entries, this is if you disagree with one of the calculations. Maybe we're looking at a W-2. Let me go find my W-2 worksheet here. Maybe for whatever reason, you know, the W-2 withholdings were different. The company made a mistake, or they were directed to take extra out, doesn't match exactly what is, you know, what the calculations are. Well, you can go ahead and override this and change this amount directly in here. Let's go ahead and let you keep a running tab of everything you've overridden. By all means, you can override. It's not going to cause the return to get rejected. Just make sure that when you do this, that you are putting in the correct amount, as the tax software is usually going to get the correct information in there. Very nice tools that I just wanted to briefly share with you. In case you are newer, I know we have about 1/4 of the people here were newer. These are the tools that I would rely on probably for at least my first 100 tax returns. I would use I would be using these tools to really learn the ropes and making sure that I'm not making any errors as I'm going through. So with all that being said, it looks like we only have about 5 more minutes here. Do want to go ahead and go over 2 more slides. And if we have time for questions, I will try to answer a few. But I want to end this with one more slide, one more poll question. I want to know if y'all would like a more in-depth product demo and further details about TaxWise Online. Today we primarily have been focusing on, the introduction to 1040, but I do demos that are just product TaxWise specific. If you are thinking about jumping into this profession, and you're not quite sure, maybe need to learn a little bit more, how does this work? I absolutely give demos that I'll walk you through, probably take an hour of your time, my time, and really walk you through on a one-on-one situation. We have a lot of people here signed up today, but if you do want that one-on-one demo, just let us know. We can absolutely reach out to you to get something scheduled. Then you can see you have our 3 options here, yes, no. I'm already using TaxWise. I'll give you all about 30 to 45 seconds here to go ahead and get your answers in. And then I just have one more item that I want to talk about here today. So I'll give you all just a little bit of time.
All right, we got 73% of the votes in, so I'll go ahead and close it now. So 63% are interested in learning more, so that's good.
Absolutely, and we will have someone reach out to that 63%, and we'll try to get something scheduled here, as soon as we can that works with your schedule. Now, last thing that I want to go over today, that if you would like to meet the TaxWise team, myself included, these are the different events throughout the year that me and the team are going to be going to. You can see the IRS hosts a whole bunch of different tax forums, which you can see here all throughout the country. Then we also have the Latino Tax Pro National Conference. I'll be a speaker at that as well. You can see most of these are going to be a little bit later in the year, so you should have plenty of time to go ahead and figure out which location you want to go to. I know I'm very excited to be going to Vegas and San Diego. I think those are my 2 favorites on the list. But we have a whole host in all different geographic areas. If you do want to go ahead and meet us, learn more about the profession, learn about taxes, by all means, please sign up for one of the events, and it'd be very nice to meet you all as well. Anything else, Amar, that you would like to go ahead and add here?
So I actually just took a look, and we do have a few questions. I don't have anything to add, but if you want, maybe we just cover these questions real fast, if you have a second.
Yeah, we can probably do a few questions here. We got about 1 or 2 minutes.
Really, the only question pertinent to this, we will provide slides. You should get an email with the slides, I believe, was Jeffrey. But for Jasmine, she asked, can you explain again why you had to find Schedule B instead of 1099 int?
Yeah, sure, and absolutely. And it's really just a preference. Some softwares do it differently. Some softwares will have the 1099 interest worksheet. Some of them will have the dividend worksheet. Just within TaxWise, we actually use the Schedule B, as you can do work on both at the same time. Schedule B is a very common form used to report them, as a lot of times these go hand in hand. Like if you get a consolidated 1099, sometimes it'll have a whole bunch of different income types. It won't just be broken out into different categories. It won't just have, okay, here's your 1099 interest, here's your dividend. It'll all be broken into just one consolidated sheet. Interest having the Schedule B, usually a little bit easier to get those all entered in at the same time. Really is no correct answer, though. You can use either one, just a matter of personal preference.
Okay, great. The other thing that just came up, Damon suggested, or he asked, can we have a training dealing with S-Corp taxes?
S-Corp taxes.
You want to cover in a future webinar?
So I think that's actually on the list of items that are going to be presented here throughout the year. but I believe that's going to be later on in the year. I think that's going to be in Q4, either October, November, or December. I don't have the exact schedule in front of me, but we are hosting one for business returns, which is really going to focus on the 1065 and 1120S. I'll probably spend about half the time on each. So I'd absolutely recommend signing up for that one, as that's what I'm going to go over S Corp returns as well as the 1065.
Well, there you go, Damon. Tune in Q4 if you want to learn more about S Corps. But thank you all for joining us today. We hope you found some value in today's webinar. And if you're interested in joining us in the future, be on the lookout. We host these once a month, like I mentioned at the beginning. We'd love to have you here. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to help as much as we can. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. It was a real pleasure. Have a great rest of your day.